The last thing we want to talk about is some of the challenges facing science today. Science is a systematic way of acquiring knowledge about the natural world, and it's very closely related to technology. Technology is just the application of scientific knowledge to the interests of humans based on years of scientific research and advancements. However, these scientific endeavors are often met with a unique set of challenges. One of the challenges facing science today is going to be biodiversity and habitat loss. Biodiversity is going to be the total number and relative abundance of the species, the variability of their genes, and the ecosystems in which they live. It's estimated to be as high as 15 million different species are found on planet Earth. Only less than 2 million have actually been named and identified. Extinction is going to be the death of the last member of a species or a larger classification category. And there's estimates of about 400 species a day being lost due to specific human activities. Two of the most biologically diverse ecosystems, the rainforest and coral reefs, have been threatened by human activity. The canopy of the tropical rainforest supports orchids, insects, monkeys, many organisms. We're actually going to spend a lot of time talking about the various habitats found in the rainforest a little bit later on in chapter 46. Coral reefs, on the other hand, provide habitats for jellyfish, sponges, crabs, lobsters, sea turtles, moray eels, fishes. All kinds of things are going to be found in the coral reefs. They're basically the rainforest of the ocean. And humans, this destruction of these ecosystems can have really dramatic and unintended impacts. Like, we care about maintaining biodiversity and limiting habitat loss because humans rely on healthy ecosystems for food, medicines, raw materials. We found that human activities like the draining of the wetlands of Mississippi and Ohio rivers led to actually significantly worsened flooding, ruined farmland. Destruction of South American rainforests killed many different species. It decreased the availability of lumber. It's important to protect these habitats, as research has shown that ecosystems cannot function properly unless they remain biologically diverse. Another really interesting challenge that's facing science is going to be the emergence of new diseases. When I used to teach this class, we used to talk about H5N1, the avian flu. Then we talked about H1N1, the swine flu, SARS, Ebola. Guess what's big and all over the news now? I mean, it's really hard to miss it. Literally, you are taking this class online because of COVID-19. It's the brand new stinking disease that we are not familiar with. Where did these emerging diseases come from? Take your time, think about it, shout it out. But where did these new diseases come from? A lot of these diseases come from things like new or increased exposure to insects or animals. There have been a huge number of diseases that started off in birds or pigs or rats and then were spread. Eventually they mutated and spread to infect human beings. Emerging diseases also come from changes in human behaviors. When humans stop spending so much time outside and start huddling in masses inside, we can see a spread of diseases. When humans don't wash their hands or sneeze into their hands and then shake hands with individuals. So those human behaviors can also lead to an increase or spread of diseases. There's also use of technology. For example, Legionnaire's disease. It emerged in 1976 due to bacterial contamination of large hotel air conditioning systems. Legionnaire's disease, interestingly enough, is a waterborne disease. However, it's spread through the air in water droplets. Air conditioning units happen to be a perfect, cool, moist environment to not only for that disease to infest and but also spread as that air is spewing out that cold, moistened air. Globalization can also lead to the emergence of new diseases as it leads to the spreading and transportation of diseases all over the world. That's why one of the very first things to happen with this COVID disease was to shut down borders. One thing that countries started doing, limiting air travel, shutting down borders to try and prevent the spread of that disease. Pathogens can also mutate. They can change hosts. Avian flu. Avian flu was originally thought only to affect birds. Then a mutated strain jumped to infecting humans. And now there are new strains of avian flu that resurface every few years. Due to the random genetic mutations and the ability to jump from one species to the next. So that is a huge challenge facing science. Is a huge challenge facing us today. Think of all of the advancements that could be made if we weren't focusing all of our energy and research and resources into stopping COVID-19. So every time a new disease emerges, everything has to stop and halt so we can deal with that new disease or that has come out. And so, that's a huge challenge facing science, is just keeping up with the spread of new diseases. Climate change is another huge challenge facing science today. It's ultimately going to be defined as changes in the normal cycles of the Earth's climate that is attributable to human activities. So when we talk about climate change, we're not talking about normal changes. We're not talking about cyclical changes. We're talking about changes that are specifically attributable to human activities. These are going to be primarily due to an imbalance in the chemical cycling of carbon. In a typically healthy ecosystem, carbon is going to be cycled throughout the ecosystem. However, due to human activities, more carbon is being released into the atmosphere than is being removed from the atmosphere. This increase is due in large part to the burning of fossil fuels, which just throws carbon dioxide into the atmosphere at a rate faster than we can even imagine. But not only the burning of fossil fuels, but the destruction of forests and the replacement by farmlands. Forests are magnificent. They are fantastic carbon scrubbers. They scrub carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and replace it with oxygen. A lot of crops are not nearly as efficient at removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And so the replacement, or the destruction of forests and replacement by farmland, has actually been a huge detriment to the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Increases in carbon dioxide causes temperatures to increase. This is called global warming. This is produced by the greenhouse effect. Global warming is changing the Earth's ecosystems, which we're going to start talking about a little bit further on in the semester. All right, so, there you go. Climate change is due to an imbalance in the carbon cycle. The last thing I want to do in this chapter and for every chapter is to just quickly review that chapter outline. So first off, we talked about the characteristics of life. When we go through this chapter outline at the end, this is a great chance to review your notes and see if there is anything you missed or anything you didn't really understand. You can either go back and watch the video on, or you can ask me. This can be a great place for you to get in your discussion questions, anything you're unclear about. Shoot me an email, ask me about it, and I would be happy to discuss it during our discussion sessions. So first off, we talked about the characteristics of life. Living things are organized. They require materials and energy from their environment, maintain homeostasis, respond to stimuli, reproduce and develop, and have adaptations. Evolution and the characteristics of life. Natural selection is going to describe the process by which living organisms are descended from a common ancestor. Organization of living things is going to be into that classification that we sort of already mentioned of kingdom, phylum, or domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. There are 3 domains of life. Those are going to be archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. Please make sure that you take the time to go over those domains of life, but you should also go into the kingdoms of life. You should be familiar with all those different kingdoms, their characteristics, and be able to identify an organism and place it into its proper domain and kingdom based on a pretty basic description of them. Next, we talked about the process of science and how it goes from observation, hypothesis, experiments, deductive reasoning, prediction, data analysis, results, conclusion, scientific theory, and then into law. Now, we did not spend a lot of time talking about the process of science, and that is because you are going to get a lot of time to practice the process of science. So what we're going to be doing in lab every single week. So make sure you read through that section of the textbook, but in terms of like making flashcards and studying and memorizing, don't worry about that. The process of science is something that you are going to get a chance to practice over and over again this semester. Finally, the challenges facing science. Things like the loss of biodiversity and habitats, the new and emerging diseases, climate change. We talked about all of those challenges, but make sure that you spend a little bit of time in this chapter. Be thinking about this. Think about how human behavior can impact some of these challenges and how can we rise to meet those challenges. So that's all we have for this chapter. That's chapter 1. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I'm available anytime via email, but especially during our discussion groups. You can hop onto our live chat meetings, and I'm happy to discuss anything there.